Brother Ron, and welcome to We All Be News Radio and TV, the news-free Dixie for the 21st century.
Yeah, I think thank you for sharing that. I think that's a very powerful lesson. This is like, with Little Richard passing. And, he said he invented rock and roll. He played a big part in creating what is known as rock and roll. But he lost his publishing for many years before, I guess, Michael Jackson gave it back to him. But when you were saying all that, I'm thinking about, people had a lot of criticisms of Coretta Scott King when she went after, securing Dr. King's legacy. And, the family held their issues, but if it wasn't for her securing his legacy, they wouldn't have nothing to fight over. Because he actually, did what she had to do to make sure his legacy was in place. I mean, the King Center was started just right after he got killed. She started that idea, but people in his inner circle said, don't do it, Coretta, let it rest. She worked on the King holiday. Basically, after he just died, she started working on that for years. Then it became known. But I look at what Coretta did versus what a lot of us don't do. And I commend her for that, although you look at the family, they're, dysfunctional. But everybody's family got issues like you talked about. Y'all had things going on. Everybody's family got that. That's normal.
Well, yes, we can all have issues, and we do, but you go in the back room, and it wasn't all Mrs. King. It was Daddy King and Mama King. See, again, Mrs. King did not do it alone, just like my mother, all of us. Nobody, Mrs. King, Coretta Scott King, did not do that standing alone. Soul trooper, Mrs. King. Don't believe that foolishness. Nobody, my brother, to be successful stands alone. Don't believe the foolishness you hear out here today, even from European Americans. Oh, I built Apple. I built this, and I built that. No. Bill Gates didn't build Microsoft alone. He had his daddy, who was a lawyer, to understand how to build a company, to form a company. Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett is not alone. He has his partner, Munger. Warren Buffett still has the house in Omaha, Nebraska, that he grew up in, what he learned from his parents. Nobody stands alone. Don't fool yourself. First of all, that is not. If you want to understand, when you hear young people talk about today, how do you know? What does it mean to be black? To be black means to have some consciousness of who you are. To be black, you have to understand your Africanness. Okay, your Africanness. And many kings and pharaohs and chiefs in Africa, till this day, I know of 5 kings. You don't hear of 5 kings. And I know of 5 queens in Africa. Okay, there was a king of Rwanda just recently who lived here in America, who went in self-exile. And another king was selected, but a woman chose him. You just don't become a king or a chief. There's somebody the shoulders that you stand on.
That's not even what I was saying. What I'm saying is it takes a person with vision for people to get around to support. She had the vision and the courage of her convictions because Coretta put that thing in Dr. King. I studied Coretta. Dr. King wanted to marry a white German cafeteria worker when he was in seminary.
Right.
And then his family wanted to marry Maynard Jackson's aunt, who was an opera singer. So what I'm saying is Coretta put that in him, and she was like an Isis to his Osiris. She resurrected her husband's legacy from the ashes and made sure it won't be forgotten for generations. She had that vision, but she had people that rallied around her in the village to support that. See, I know how things work, but the thing about it is,
well, I'm not going to take credit for Mrs.
Don't have that village mindset now that we used to have back in the day, because we were forced to be a village because of the laws and the restrictions.
Right. Well, Mrs. King, and you are correct. Mrs. King, even though they both come out of the South, Mrs. King did have, like Aunt Betty, as I said, like Aunt Betty, what Uncle Malcolm saw in her. All right? Dr. King, I know, as you said, Dr. King is looking at a European. And early on days, Uncle Malcolm had dated a lot of white women.
But all of them do that, don't they, Brother Rodnell? Everybody. Marcus Garvey had a white female playmate. All of them did that.
Yeah, but somebody has to snatch you and clue you.
Mm-hmm.
And then clue you on to what when they snatch you from over here and you go over there. And you know, people set you up. See, our people seem to think that when these happen to this men or women, it's just somebody you fell into and you saw you like. No. There are people out here in our community, brother, that deliberately go out and what do you see or what's happening in the black community? Come over here and tell me, what are your people going? Who's talking? Who's saying this? Dr. King was up and coming. Don't forget, with all due respect to Mrs. King, it was Dr. King that's in the grave. It was Dr. King that went out there every day and put his life on the line. It was Dr. Medgar Evers who went out there. Yes, not taking any credit from these women. They were home to raise these babies because after Dr. King was gone, who had to raise those babies? But each and every single one of them. Yes, they had their own visions. But you cannot have a vision and be black in America or anywhere on this planet unless you're standing on the shoulders of others. Don't fool yourself. Civilization has not progressed like that. And I know, because we had family in Daddy King's church. Daddy King and those, and Mama King and those people down there, brother, that, also Mrs. King, Coretta Scott King, I forgot her first name, her people, felt that, her family members felt that she was higher than Dr. King. She was above in her status and kind of coming down. There's, you know, in some of these churches, you know, they got the church thing. They prefer you to marry in your own church or marry this one over here. So Mrs. King had to deal with her own family too. And so the two of them, you know, it's they had to jive together. And Dr. King coming on to Mrs. King as he did was also the blessings of Daddy King's church and Mrs. King's family coming together and making sure that she marries a strong black man and making sure that the King family marries a strong black woman. Down there in the South, brother, it ain't easy. I don't know if you're in Memphis, but Malcolm's family come out of that deep South. They're Georgia folks. And I know my mother would tell me, because my mother's family knew of them, all them ministers. Don't forget, Malcolm's family was a minister, and you can't, and his father was a minister, and his father's father was a minister, and they were Masons. So you can't be a Mason and a minister in Georgia, and nobody don't know of anything else that's going on in some county or somewhere or some church, and when they get together or have their conventions and people talk. So it was a blessing for Dr. King and Mrs. King to get together. It was a well orchestrated. How do you say when you have coming out of the South when the elders kind of maneuver to kind of make it so you know somebody's in the presence and they kind of push you one way, but you don't know you're being pushed.
Right. I know. It speaks to what you just said. Like, for example, when you were saying about Daddy King was not always behind his son on this civil rights, social justice thing. Right. If you look at the Montgomery bus boycott, Daddy King was pressured by other ministers. Like, you talk about these ministers. A lot of black ministers didn't like Dr. King. They had no love for Dr. King Jr. Right. So he was pressured to try to bring his son back from Montgomery to Atlanta into the pulpit in Ebenezer. But Dr. King stood his ground. More likely stood his ground because he had somebody like Coretta backing him. Then he had the community of Montgomery putting pressure, like you said, pushing him to greatness, forcing him to be the leader of the Montgomery Improvement Association, forcing him to be the face and spokesperson of that movement up there. So it's a village, of course. And he's pushed, but if he didn't have, Daddy King said years later that he glad that his son stood his ground and kept true to his conviction.
Do you know about
his son's vision like that?
Do you know what Dr. King and his ministry here in Boston at the church here at AME in Boston in Roxbury?
Tell me.
Are you aware of Reverend Haynes here?
I heard the name before. I heard Reverend Haynes.
Yes, the Reverend Haynes. He died a few years ago. Reverend Haynes and I forgot the name right now off my head before Reverend Haynes. But when Dr. King and the people here at AME Church in Roxbury, when they had discovered, and Dr. King, when he lived in the South End here, not far from us on Massachusetts Avenue, and there's a plaque there today where he lived while he was at Boston University.
So much black history in Boston, man. I keep on forgetting all the history in Boston of black people.
Yes, yes. Well, you have to know the South End of Boston. And, you know, when you're up here in Boston and a black woman or a black man and you're supposed to be about something and you're around black conscious people, even if they're not that conscious, they are uplifting in what they're doing in their righteousness, whether it be Christian, Muslim, or Hebrew, or Mason, or whatever. So Dr. King was encouraged and coached while he was here in Boston University. And you need to study that. That's why Dr. King's papers, okay, it was not Mrs. King. See, I was in court. I spent all but 3 days. You know, the case was here in Boston court, okay? And I saw that case. I was in court from the morning it started to the end. And another brother and I, we had some children. A few children we were able to bring into court because most of the people in the court were reporters and they were from Asia. There was only one African American in the courtroom, Mal Miller, who is the founder of the Bay State Banner, and he didn't stay as myself and this brother that brought these children. And Mrs. King, the only support she had from the black community in Boston in the courtroom, I'm not talking about with some folks, they bring her house and all that stuff, was Dr. Alan Counter, who was the chair of the Harvard Foundation, who was great support for her while Mrs. King was here. And I was in court and heard the evidence of the King papers and had an opportunity to speak with Mrs. King in the judge's chambers. Mrs. King... brother, you know, as I said, you cannot do anything because she actually, it was settled later. She had lost the case. And she was her own worst witness. But Boston University and the 60, almost 100 million, I think it was a $500,000, or according to the university president, Mr. Silver, Dr. Silver, who was on the witness stand at the time and testifying to the fact the millions that the university had raised and put out, and the discrepancy in what Dr. King wanted and what Mrs. King wanted and all this. And there was a lynching, of course, of Dr. King's papers. We like lynching Dr. King all over again. But and that's still an issue today. That's still not. It's still not settled, as is Malcolm's papers at the library, because people, you know, we have a problem. And when we're divided, and those that are around us, and people see the division, and they exploit it. And unfortunately, I believe it is one of the things that why Mrs. King is not with us today, in being, you know, the stress of trying to keep that together, but also not having people around her who have a full knowledge and understanding. Neither did she. Neither did Aunt Betty. Neither did Mrs. Evers. Neither did Mrs. Kennedy. But what helped you supplant that, you need people that understand what you're going through and will sincerely help you without any motives. And we are fortunate to have what we do have of Dr. King. But one of our problems we have here in America, we put all our vestiture in America itself. There's the continent of Africa, the motherland. And a lot of our people, as Malcolm said, you don't want to have nothing to do with it. I ain't got nothing over in Africa. You do. You lost your mind in Africa. You need to go there and get it back. You need to go to Africa and get your mind back. Your vestiture is here. You put too much in America. The European American does not put all his investiture in America. You hear every president, including right on down to Obama, that tell you there is a relationship, a serious, binding relationship, not just strategically, with their motherland, England, Europe, the continent. Study that and how that works. Every single solitary white person in this country of Irish, Italian, Scotch, English, Russian, or whatever has a right to go back to their motherland, even though they're U.S. citizens, and partake of the fruits of their ancestors. And I don't mean in talk, in education and in economics. All you have to do, as they say in America, pull yourself up the bootstrap and get going and be a part of your legacy. And as you see in America today, every time you go to a market or go to the library or turn on the TV, what do you hear them talk about? They talk about their Americans. They're Americans, how the American flag, and they wave this flag. But they also talk about and they read and study and praise their ancestries. Aristotle, Socrates, Louis Pasteur, King George. The books that they put in our schools to our children and talk about always refer to their ancestry and their legacy. And my Malcolm's sister, A.L.L, my mother, fought here in Boston for that, and there are others fighting now. And to get that history, that's what black studies are about. That's what Congressman Powell and Malcolm was working on. That's what my brother worked on. That's how we have black studies in these colleges and universities around the nation and around the world. It's not perfect as we would like it, but this is something that Malcolm, working with Reverend Congressman Adam Clayton Powell when he was chair of the Health, Education, and Welfare Committee in the House, and my mother later on, and my brother, and those that come out of San Francisco State University, and those demonstrations that started in 1967 or 68, how that evolved over to CCNY College in New York to get some education of our people, of who we are as a people, into these universities and then into the schools. This is what we need to invest in our future and our children. And how do you do that? You do not put all your investment in one basket. They tell you in America, diversify. And you see this is what these people do. We don't diversify, brother. And we don't want to because of the division in our community, because we are mindless. We don't want to diversify, and many of us, we do not want to seek some knowledge and who can shoulders that we can stand on that will support us. We don't do this. We don't do this. This is what Malcolm and the family was doing in the nation. This is what nation time is that they talked about, and nation building, the support of each other. No, we're not supposed to go out here and seeking the support of some European American and Black Lives Matter. That's not our legacy. That's not our history. We didn't come from millions of years back to where we are today to go out here and be seeking something with people who are trying to terrorize you. Let them first. If you want to work with us, as Malcolm talked, if you want to be, Brother Hurd, or any of your listeners want to be about Malcolm, don't talk about Malcolm. Anything his quotes or say anything about Malcolm X, Sheikh El-Hajj Ali El-Shabazz. Not even Dr. King got off that stuff way back. Read his last book, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community. They don't want you to talk about that. His last book before the man was assassinated, you would think you're reading Malcolm X. I'm not talking about the King of I Have a Dream book. I'm talking about the Dr. King.
Right.
Okay? And my mother, I didn't like Dr. King. I didn't like Dr. King at all. Okay? I didn't like Dr. King at all. And when I say I don't like him, not as a human being, but I didn't like or care what he was about. But you know something? One day, my mother pulled me aside, and because she went to Dr. King's funeral. She went up there, down there. And she said, no, he's a Southern black man out here fighting for something. He's not out in the bar room. He's not out in the streets hustling. He's not pimping. He's not shifting and shaking and shiving. He's out here, as I said to you, what my mother said, trying to build something. He's a builder. He's not a destroyer. Dr. King was building. Congressman Adam Clayton Powell was about building. Malcolm was about building. You never heard Malcolm talk about anything and destroying anything. You never heard about Dr. King destroying anything. You never heard Medgar Evers talking about destroying anything. Move forward. Go forward. Build. They all talked about building. Building not only your soul, mind, body, and spirit, and the content. Dr. King talked about the content of your character. Build on that character, who you are as a human being. Malcolm X talked about your mind, the same thing. Build on that. Seek out. Seek and you shall find.
Okay, Brother Rodney, I want to get to some certain things before we get out for the end of the conversation.
Sure.
I want to. You talked about Nigel Thatch, the guy who played Malcolm X and Selma, but also for the series Godfather of Harlem. I want to ask about your perception or your take on that series. What's your thoughts about the series? How accurate it is in terms of relationships between Bumpy and Malcolm and Adam? How were they portrayed in your opinion?
It is. I've been on set, brother. And I have to say, first of all, let me say I am thankful and grateful to Forrest Whitaker and his staff and Paul Erskine, him, producer, director, is at the time, they're still working on it, was 5 or 6, including Professor Smalls and those that he knew, who's a consultant on the film, and Disney. But you have to realize it is a movie, drama, fictionalized based on fact. And I'm aware of that, and I was made aware of that. That said, this is not a documentary. Okay? This is not a documentary. You go to PBS or educational programming. This is streaming of Disney. And the Disney people put out quite a sum. And as you know, if you do your research, when you see these streaming companies, what they put out, it's not chump change. But being on set and having that opportunity to be there, invited by them, and meeting the particulars and some of the particulars and the principals, and the final actor Nigel Tish, who was not 6'4", by the way.
No, I could tell, right? He got a big head, though. You need to have a big head to be a movie star. He fill up the screen with his head.
Well, brother, you said that. I did, but
I mean, you think that's true? Though, like, look at Ben Affleck.
Well, no. I'm not going to go over the no. I'm not. I don't know where you're going over the left side or right side. No. I leave Nigel alone. Okay, he's Nigel. I praise Nigel. I love him, and I told him as such. Because, listen, Nigel, brother, I got chills with looking. Listen, I never sat behind a director's camera before in my life. Okay, I'm sitting in the director's chair looking behind. I had that opportunity to see that, and I'm brother, it's like being in 2 dimensions. I'm looking in the camera, and I take my head around, and I'm looking. I would not want that job. I tell you this right now.
Wow.
Okay, I would not want that job of putting that together, of looking in the camera and then looking, moving, taking your head out from behind the camera, then looking at the set and go over and look at the set, and I'm going back and look at the camera, and I'm saying, this shit's real, man. This is stuff. This thing is, excuse my
no, you're right.
American Swahili. Okay. Yeah, but seeing Nigel on camera, and then seeing Nigel, as I said, he's not 6'4" like my uncle. Okay, Nigel has to step up on the fact we were talking at the studio, and he was going to his dressing room one day, and he went up 1 step. Then I saw the 6'4" Nigel. But when he stepped down, I'm looking at a sort of a downward trajectory. But he is what Nigel has all said and done. And jokingly here, I love the brother. He was sincere. He asked me, "Do you think I'm doing this, brother? Do you think I'm?" He was happy that Professor Small was there, but he was more pleased that I, being invited to the set and to see the selection of actors, and then see that we have Nigel to work with I could see. I don't know of anyone else in the acting field unless you create someone. I never heard of a Nigel Tish before. I like Idris Elba. He's known, but I do know there are a lot of South African actors, and there are a few Asians that could play Malcolm. I've known of a few. Few. When I say few, as far as the physicality, as far as the deliverance, that's tough. And the deliverance and mannerisms, Nigel is not 100%, let alone 1,000%, because I expect 1,000%. He's not 100%. But to do the work that Nigel has to do, what we were appreciating and what we were about, Professor James Small being a consultant to the Disney people, who is on our board of directors, as one of our board of directors, and who also was one of the personal private secretaries of my mother. He didn't know. He never met Malcolm. He only saw Malcolm speak. But he lived in our home. Professor Small lived in our home with his family for 5 years here in Boston, Massachusetts. So he knows of things of Malcolm from my mother, and having been her secretary. Some call him bodyguard. Professor Small is, I wouldn't call him a bodyguard. He's not a bodyguard. Brother James Stock, who was my mother's chief bodyguard, he is a bodyguard.
You said James Small never met Malcolm X?
No, he never met Malcolm.
It's like when I see him on interviews, it sounds like he had a relationship in terms of being a bodyguard or meeting him. So no. He never met Malcolm X in person. He met Malcolm on the street preaching. Oh, okay. So he never introduced himself like formally. Okay, I got you.
No, that's what I mean. Let me make that clear. He never formally met my uncle, but he's been to rallies of my uncle. That's how he came to him and his mother. His mother, Professor Small's mother, came to my mother and asked my mother if she would take James. He wasn't a professor at the time. He was out of the military and in college or coming out of the college and just trying to start his life and career. And his mother asked my mother if, and her son being an admirer of Malcolm and all this, if she would take Malcolm under her, Professor Smalls under her wing. And my mother did, and my mother liked him very much, and she loved much about Professor Small, mother and father, so she did. And he ended up in our home with his wife and family, Sister Carol, here in Boston, Massachusetts. Okay. So he knows. He's my brother. Professor Smalls is my brother in spirit and in mind. We disagree on things, but Professor Smalls knows what he's supposed to do. And we're fortunate to have him there with Disney to see to it that things where you have something that is a fictional narrative based on fact and history. The book that was written by this person, Bumpy, that Malcolm knew in his life, was written by, I think, Bumpy's niece or daughter.
Oh, we're talking about Mamie Johnson or Mamie Johnson.
Right. I believe, yes. And the family sold the book and their connections and relations with Professor Smalls knew certain people, and they knew he knew about something about Malcolm, and they wanted his technical advice or, this type of thing that is required or some movie houses require. And they've done a very good job. As that said, it is a movie and it's a series, and a lot has to be condensed. The relationships that is portrayed, there is a narrative that has to be. I don't want to get out here in front of the people at Disney and their partners. So I won't do that. But what I can say for our part and what I've seen on set and meeting the principals and the people involved and Disney's involved in it, I praise the work very much so. And the reason why I do that is, like other projects that documentary and film, the false narrative that's been out here with Malcolm in the legacy. This addresses that. The Disney film addresses some of the false narrative. And what you must understand, what happened is going on in the Disney film, there was a drug problem, an addiction in our community in America. And Uncle Malcolm had started, and he had asked my mother's support back in the 50s. I remember this when we were going to New York to visit him and other family members in New York City and Jersey. We drove around Harlem, and I'm sitting in the back seat, and my uncle wanted my mother's support in everything that he was doing to not only just join the nation, but in any other kind of way, if she could donate funds to the nation or his projects, in setting up a drug-free treatment program. And what Malcolm set up in Harlem, in New York, was the first drug treatment program set up by an individual organization and an individual in America, in our community, to help our people who had a drug addiction. The program was set up for those in the Nation of Islam that became Muslims and that wanted to kick the habit. So Malcolm had taken this to the city of New York, talking about a very successful program and taking that around the nation, but it was in the temple. My mother took umbrage with that. My mother said, well, you need to expand on this, Malcolm. You know, it's just not those that in the nation or you asked to join that got themselves up off the street. This is what Malcolm, when he preached, he talked about uplift yourself. Well, he'd be the one that when you come out, you have to come out to the FOI meetings, and we have to come to your home and counsel you and work with you, and he would do that. He would do that and bring people with consultation, those that had experience in our community of working with our people psychologically and mentally and spiritually and physically. Malcolm set up that program. And so that's what you see in that movie, that this young lady, Bumpy's daughter, that happened. That woman was brought to Malcolm so Malcolm could help her. And
so that's actual true. Okay, I didn't know that. All right.
That's part of what happened with this young lady in that part, and people like that. So the you know, there's a timeline here, and the relationships evolve to in the movie now. How it evolves in real life, that is another story. But the point being is that Malcolm is about a drug treatment program and solving the problems of our addiction amongst our people in the community, that in the Muslim community, who had become Muslims and they were kicking a habit, and he was helping them with that. So that is fact, and so that's why Professor Smalls was there, to make sure that it doesn't get out of hand. But a script has to be written, a series has to be done, and you can't tell a man's life history and story and his community work and his civil activism in a few series. So Disney and the writers and Paul Erskine and others, one of the producers, and Forrest, actor-director Forrest Whitaker, has done a great job. And Nigel has done a fantastic job, and I wish him all the best going forward. That's all I can say about that without getting ahead of anything here.
Oh, yeah, I understand. I just want to bring up a couple of things with the portrayal of the drug, how they portrayed the drug treatment program. Some people, including some Nation of Islam members, feel like it wasn't accurate in terms of how it was portrayed on the screen. Like they wasn't like training people to beds or whatever people were saying there. And also, people critique the body language of Brother Nigel. I think he did a great job too, but people were talking about, will Malcolm have his hands in his pocket when he's talking to somebody? Or his shoulders slouch or whatever? They were just doing a little nitpicky stuff.
Well, and, listen.
Also with John Carlo, I think his name is John Carlo Esposito. He's a great character actor. He's one of my favorite actors. But his portrayal of Adam Clayton Powell Jr. was troubling to me. It was actually too comical, too goofy. It wasn't really respectful towards the man. I think a better portrayal was Harriet Lennox III's Keep the Faith. His version of Adam Clayton Powell Jr. is the best portrayal I've seen so far in film. So what's your take on that?
Well, I'm not. I knew Dr. Powell. I love brother, a belated brother. I love him. I love him dearly, and him and my mom were very close. In fact, Reverend Congressman Powell, what they did to him, was he let it get to him. My mother tried to him up. In fact, I have a photo when they were trying to arrest him, and this is recorded, and I can speak on this. This is recorded, my brother, in the Library of Congress, when they wanted to arrest Powell after he had won re-election, and they were trying to arrest him so he couldn't take his seat back in Congress. And my mother organized clandestinely so he could appear back in the Capitol and before they know it, he was sitting in his chair in disguise, and here's Adam Clayton Powell. And that there is a legal procedure for you to, I'm not going to go into depth, but my mother's involvement there and getting Congressman Powell back into his elected seat in the House. He was strong brother. He had come a long ways from the 30s. He had gotten so many bills that all of Americans, every single soul, black, brown, green, red, or yellow, have benefited in some way. It's not perfect from his work. He stood on the shoulders of his father and Abyssina Baptist Church and others, but he still has to carry the torch, and so my mother supported him as well, stood with him when they stood, him and my mother and Congressman Powell, with the students who were demonstrating at City College when they took over the City College campus. That was in Amsterdam magazines. Subsequent to that, when he was down, my mother went to visit him. He was the first one to receive the Malcolm X Black Achievement Award. I have a picture of that with Congressman Powell at his home in Bimini, and my mother is presenting him the first African American of us. We choose our heroes. This is our hero. And that's how my mother wanted. So where in the nation do you know that any black organization that has gone out of this stature and presented a black man or woman an award for black achievement, a Malcolm X Black Achievement Award, and supporting someone? My mother did that. She supported other people for them to succeed and what they needed to do. So you're right. To get someone to act Congressman Powell, you know what? Being there, having known this man myself, having known my mother's love for Reverend Congressman Powell, having known the love of my uncle for his brother, and what they shared together as men of power, speaking truth to power, I cannot honestly, brother, condemn what the character that they have. I have to tell you the truth. You have to speak to someone else. It's not perfect. I know there's a lot of people, but neither every depiction of Jesus that's played, or Moses, of Abraham, has never been, or of Muhammad. Peace be upon all the prophets. Mashallah, peace be all the prophets. That there will be people who will nitpick, the naysayers. But when I hear that, I say, what have you done lately? Have you bled? When I hear people criticize my uncle or Congressman Powell or Dr. King, as my mother had said to me when I was critical of our beloved hero, Dr. Martin Luther King, that I did not like. And she said, pulled me aside, shut up, Rodnell. This is a black man who is out here fighting for what he believed in. He's not out here pimping some black woman or hustling or selling drugs. He's not out here talking about how he can make more money. He's out here talking about something that has to do about us. It may not be the methodology, it's the same as Malcolm, because she told Malcolm the same thing, okay? Malcolm the same thing, and she understood what Malcolm was doing. She understood. That's why you have, in the National Civil Rights Museum, we have now come out with the other film, the behind-the-scenes relationship quietly done between Malcolm, not just a picture you see, another symbol without substance of Malcolm and King smiling and meeting each other. There were things that went on before and after that. So I, in all truthfulness, as far as the character that plays Dr. Powell, I cannot condemn it at all.
But he was short too. Why are they short guys? Because Powell was a tall guy. He was 6'4", 6'3", too, like Malcolm, right?
Brother man. Be careful of talking about shortness. And fingers and feet. Somebody was president of the United States. I think he might take umbrage with that on the hand. Okay, and he's president. So let's leave the short stuff out of it, because you have a man in the White House who people have commented on something of his or another that's short, but there he stands. Okay, and I have met Donald Trump. I know how tall he is. You know, he's got some padded shoulders, but
he's not 6 feet tall. He's not over 6 feet tall. I thought he was 6'2" or something like that.
Well, no, he's tall. He may be wearing lifts. I can't speak on that. But my mother was buying the building instead of buying the Teresa Hotel. She was in the process of buying the building before buying the Teresa Hotel in New York. Subsequent to that, we bought another building. But she wanted to buy the building that Trump ended up buying. That's why he did it, because you could get the building for $1.
Wow.
But him, his father, and all, they got it, and I happened to be. My mother wanted me to go down one day, and the building was open, and lo and behold, I'm going in the building, and I come out, and who do I see? I didn't know who he was at the time, but I didn't know who he was. It's just he had this car with an antenna on the back of the hood and all this business, and this tall guy, but. You know, I didn't introduce myself. I didn't know who he was. I just passed him because I was standing waiting for my ride to pick me up, and there he is. You know, but he has his history in New York, him and his family, and we're aware of his history and who he is. But you know, and he's not short. Okay, in height. I can't speak on anything else, and I'm not going to bother the brother that's playing Adam Powell. So let's don't go there. Let's move on to something else, because that is nitpicking. I will say people have to do their research. The thing is, you must remember, he is playing a character. How many black young men and women and children know who Powell was before this part? Just think about that. That's the positive. He is playing a man that 90%, I don't agree. I didn't write the script. But he's playing a man that our people don't know anything about, our young people. You and I know. Okay, you and I know.
Not because of school, though, because I just have intellectual curiosity to know, just do the research. But this is what I'm saying. The point I'm making is that I'm tired of people taking these Hollywood movies or series as the factual thing. If they just told the truth about black people history, it reads like a superhero book. It's like, you look at, this is Black Music Month, Charlie Parker. If you just told the truth about Charlie Parker, that he practiced 15 hours a day on a saxophone for 4 years, that's amazing. Brother, you just told the truth about who we are as a people.
Brother man.
All that stuff they do in Hollywood.
Brother man, wait a minute, brother. You're talking another universe. You're talking about making capitalist money. This is the land of capitalists. What is it you do not understand, my brother? Apparently you haven't lived. When I say you, don't get me wrong, brother Hurd. I've been talking for years. So I love you, my brother. You call me all the time. You support our May 19th. So I'm not putting you down on your position. When I say you, I mean those who think similar, of the same mindset. See, I've studied European Americans, and I lived in Europe and went to them universities, and my mother supported that, so I could study and learn the character, learn the nature of a thing, as Malcolm talked about. And let me tell you, in Europe, especially in the Scandinavian countries, they're not all into this hyper stuff when they're talking about their history and characters. That's why they don't make the money that Hollywood does. Okay, these European films, France, England, the actors, they do not make, the money that Hollywood does. You can go to China or India. They make, even on their history. So, in fact, Hollywood got a lot of stuff that they're doing from Chinese and African and Asian opera, over-dramatizing. If you see, I'm married to an Indian, and the biggest producers of movies in the world is India. They produce India and China. They produce more like a grain of sand on the beach, okay? But
That's called Bollywood, right? Is Bollywood over there?
There's Bollywood, there's Nollywood, and there's Yingwood, okay? Leave that alone, okay? Hollywood and Florida have learned the history. There's a history here, my brother, and you're not going to make money on the kind of capital money in this Western world based on fact if you want to make money. And I can tell you from someone who has a legacy, Jim McCormick, the founder of IMG, who partnered with International Management Group, who partnered with the great golfer Arnold Palmer, the largest sports management group on the continent, in the world. All the sports, a lot of the tournaments, you name it. And I met Jim. I used to play professional tennis back in the 70s, and he was building his corporation up. And as a professional tennis, trying to be a professional tennis player on the side, he was recruiting tennis players to be part of his group. Years later, when I wanted to do my book and looking for an agent, I didn't end up with IMG, but I called Mr. McCormick, who I knew over the years. I just picked up the phone and gave him a call, and I asked him, I said, listen, this is what I have, this is what I want to do, and he took my call, believe it or not, just one call. I didn't leave a message. He got his secretary, he took the call, and he was appreciative of things that I had been doing in tennis. So I told him what I wanted to do now, and he put me on to one of his vice presidents at the time that he was starting up a literary division for his athletes to do their biographies. And I spoke to his vice president and Jim together, and one of the things that they told me about entertainment in America and in the capitalist world, how it works. And Jim, God bless his soul, he's moved on, he's passed on, I'm sorry, and he left his wife, Betsy Negligent, and his partners to run IMG. But I thank Jim, and there's something that, as you're saying, Ron, about Hollywood and these films, what Jim told me and his VP, Rodnell, what do you want to do with your book? And I'm quoting Jim here and his partner. Rodnell, what do you want to do with this book on Malcolm? He says, sounds like a fantastic book. I'm very interested in reading it. But what do you tell me? How can we help you? What do you want to do? I said, I want to publish a book, and I need an agent. He says, well, so what do you want to do with the book? What is the book about? I said, you know what it's about. It's about Malcolm X, family, yada, yada, yada. He says, so what do you want to do? He kept asking me. I said, I want to publish it. And he says, so you want to publish this book? And do you want to, I said, I want to publish a book. And when he kept asking what I want to do, I want to publish a book and I want to make money. He said, you can't do both. And he said to me, you can't do both. I said, what? He said, you can't do both. And I want to tell you something, what he told me then, and this is in the early 90s, that relates to today and all the sexism you see on TV, and this one said that, and that one said this. And this is the man who founded IMG, co-founder IMG with the great Arnold Palmer. These people I knew personally. And then later Palmer supports Tiger Woods. And you have to know what goes on in history and behind the scenes. Jim said to me, you can't do both, Rodnell. It's not happening. That's not real. This is not America, where you can tell your uncle's story as you want it and make money. It doesn't work like that. If you want to make money, Rodnell, I need something scintillating. He says, what do you want scintillating? I don't have anything scintillating. He says, Rodnell, you didn't hear me. Do you want to make money? I says, yes, and I want to publish the book, the story, what it is. He said, no, it doesn't work like that. You can't do both. Forget about it. And if you're not interested in making money, he didn't insult me. He didn't any innuendos or say anything like that. He said, Rodnell, we cannot help you if you want to make money and you want to print publish the story of your uncle, unless you have some scintillating that you can put in there. Don't you have something? And I said, well, and that's why some people tried to misquote my memoir of Seventh Child now that I said Malcolm did this and that. It's not even in there, but people tried to twist it as that to make it sound scintillating. I never said anything about Malcolm doing anything scintillating. I just point of fact what happened around Malcolm, and that was not Malcolm. Things that were going on. You'd have to read the book. Just like Malcolm going to prison. He didn't have to go. My parents could have bailed him out from going, and he shouldn't have been arrested, all right? Just like they closed the case files. The files are sealed. Why would they seal the files, the case files of Malcolm X in perpetuity? Why? If he's such a bad criminal, why? Do they have the case files sealed of John Dillinger, of James, the killer, the killer of this guy that was in prison, the satanic guy, whatever his name was, I don't know. James Jeffrey Manson. Is his case file sealed?
Mm.
So why are the case files sealed of Malcolm X? Why?
I want to talk to you about the Netflix series of Who Killed Malcolm X. Did they approach you about working on this series? I read the Carl Evans review.
Good.
I really appreciate that. It was very insightful.
Great. I'm glad you did that. Yes, I've been approached by several people, and there are people who are working on things, and I've had some conversations with several. I had conversations initially with Netflix. They were talking to me with one of their house people, Negroes, for about a year, running the same program, same game that they wanted to put down with my mother. And I don't know, apparently they didn't do their forensic research about my mother or who my mother is or who my relationship to my mother and her relationship to wanting to do the movie. These people, they, just like any industry, they can put the wrong people to do a job and they misstep. And obviously this young lady, she was trying her best for more than a year, brother, calling me and emailing me, just calls. And I had to get kind of creative and not insulting a young African-American woman, the woman you see that is in the documentary, but acting like with me that I'm one of her house brothers. Yeah, in the slave house. You seen the movie Django, did you not? With
Uncle Stephen. Yeah, I see.
Okay, well that type of mentality, that type, and that's how I was approached. That's how my mother was approached, and that's how I've constantly been approached. But not constantly. I don't want to say, but about 70-80% of the time. And I take the position, and I was raised by my parents. It's not about the dollar. Okay, I stand on the shoulders of our ancestors. I am here because of the love of my parents and my aunts here in Boston and my family. I am here because of Malcolm's father and mother. I am here because of all my grandparents on both sides. I am here. And our ancestors, those black men, women, and children who've lost their lives, especially our sisters. So I am our women. I've seen in my time and now today how our black women are being accosted, or any woman, black or white. It doesn't matter to me how a woman is mistreated. When you can mistreat your woman in any kind of way, what the Creator has given us a partner, and you're going to mistreat the partner, and that will raise and birth your child, and you call yourself a man. To me, no, you're not a man. There's no kind of man. If you want to be a man and what you can do to a woman, come do it to me. Approach another man. Leave the women out of it. And that's the problem we have today. That's a big problem. So that's all I want to say on that.
So what is your take on have you seen the documentary series?
I've seen it. I've seen all of the series of Disney. I've seen it all. As I said, it's a documentary. It's not a documentary. It's not a documentary. Excuse me, I misspoke. It's a drama series fictional, based on fact That's exactly what it is. It's a drama series, fictional, based on fact. Talking facts. Fact, Malcolm was Malcolm X, Sheikh Al-Hajj Malik Al-Shabazz. He did those things for drug treatment. Okay?
Oh, I'm not talking about the Godfather of Harlem. I'm talking about the Netflix documentary.
The Netflix, the same thing. Netflix is a joke. That's just a joke. Let me just say that right here. It's a joke. Straight up front. Carl couldn't have. Carl had, he's an investigative reporter, and he was mentored by Katharine Graham there at the Washington Post. That's what he used to do. He was a reporter there and a writer for them, and he was mentored by those Post people. So Carl, he has done great research. There are things that he knows, and there are things that he does not know. And I know he doesn't, because he had done something earlier on my mother, and talking about, is my mother, you can read it, he had it online, is my mother really the sister of Malcolm X, and really was she born here, and all that. He hasn't done the work.
Well, I think Carl, when I read his thing on the Netflix series, then he started talking about OJ. He lost me, because you didn't even throw in OJ. When you got the letter to the DA, whoever, about the reopening of the case about Norman Butler and all that. I like some of the stuff he was saying, make you think. I don't trust any one source for the 100% truth on anything. I do all my research.
Well, you should. You should. And that's
Malcolm would say. Malcolm teach you that, right? He said, just do the research.
Do the research, and then, my brother, when you do the research, the forensic research, I'm putting the forensic in there, but that's what he talks about. When you do the research, he talks about, and it's forensic, critically analyze your research. What do they do out here in science? Malcolm was a philosopher, a scientist, a scholar. Malcolm wrote poetry. People don't know him. Uncle Malcolm wrote poetry. There's a poetry book Uncle Malcolm had written. I have some of Uncle Malcolm's poetry. The first poem I ever had in my life, he didn't write it, but I got it from him. It was by Rudyard Kipling. And by Rudyard Kipling, but Rudyard Kipling got it from someone else in India.
That's the European way, right? They take our stuff, they appropriate other people's stuff.
Of course. Same as Jungle Book and the boy in the jungle with the tiger running around and all that. They're good at that. Don't. Listen, brother.
They the best.
Let's leave. That's what they do, and they're good at. They do it to their own. They're the master. With Malcolm, they're the master crook. That's why they call him the devil. Malcolm called him the blonde, blue-eyed devil. You're doing the acts, and everybody, he's a racist. No. There are black devils out here, too. What do you think a house Negro is? What do you think that thing was in that movie Samuel Jackson played? Man, you see the eyes of that thing. Listen, when I saw him and standing there, listen, that man scared me, and it was a movie.
Right.
Samuel Jackson, because I've met those people, okay? I've met them house Negroes, all right? and his boss man, his slaveholder, I think it was Leonardo DiCaprio, played it right. He said, I don't know what to do with that boy. Meaning, and I've seen him down south. He better at being the master in the master's house than the master is.
It was disturbing, man, because Leonardo DiCaprio said he was disturbed by that portrayal. It really bothered him deeply.
Well, it should bother him deeply, but I found that to give credit to why, I wondered, and I did some research too, brother. I went, wait a minute, I said, Samuel Jackson can't play that character as good as he did. And listen, he upset me that I swore, brother, after that movie for 2 years. If I think I'm going to have to walk across the street, because I think if I see him, I'm going to jump on him. Okay, then you read about me. But the thing of it is, I know he was acting, but to be that good of in character, I did some research on the brother, and I know how now he got into the character. I understand. I understand what he went through, and he went deep. He went deep.
Yeah.
Okay? So I understand it. Okay? That's more. That ain't, what he did wasn't acting. That was real.
Yes, sir. You know what? The time is flying by real fast. I don't want to, don't monopolize your time, but I just want to ask several quick things.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Hakeem Jamal. He was a cousin of Malcolm X. He wrote the book On the Dead Level.
Who are you talking about? Whose cousin?
Malcolm's cousin, right? Hakeem Jamal from Boston. Hakeem, the co-founder of Kwanzaa.
Yeah. Oh,
I don't know. I read about him when I was researching a couple of years. I said, "Man, he's an interesting dude." I don't know. He died a
a
violent
lot
death.
of people, brother. Let me just back up. A lot of people say they're related to us because they know us aren't, but maybe he's talking spiritually.
Okay. I think it was like a marriage, like I don't know, but while reading, because you can't trust everything you read either, of course. But he wrote a book called On the Dead Level. Have you heard of that book?
Yes. There are several people married into our family, including Captain Joseph in New York. He married.
Really? Captain Joseph was wow.
After Malcolm, he married one of our cousins. And then just like Farrakhan, one of his sons married into Elijah Muhammad. And we got
all in the family
members running around, brother. Let me just say that. So
I think he's a cousin by marriage. I think he was a cousin by marriage.
Yes. And in so being, you hear things and you see things. But see, in Malcolm's family, coming all the way from down south, and our legacy and coming out of Africa and Asia, we don't talk about everything that's in our family deep, that even those that are married in. It's a saying that, there are things you say and there are things you will say in public that you say in public, but or that you don't say in public that you'll say in private. And there are things that you say in private that you'll say amongst those that are married into your family. And then there are things that you'll say only with those who are blood family members, because that's blood family business. Mm-hmm. You don't share that. That's up to the one that you're married to or your sibling. If they want to step out of bounds and talk about your blood family's business, what you stand on and who you are as a family, okay, and maybe you're the one you married, we don't agree. And many people in our family, we don't agree with the person you married, but that's who you married. We see who you married, but we don't want you to share certain things. We have that in my family, the Little family, or the Cersleys, or the Grays, or the Millers. They don't share it, okay? My wife's family is Indian, Asian, from India, South India. From Karnataka, where the black Indians are, the real Indians, indigenous people, not the Parsis or the Patels that come from Iraq, Iran, that married in with the British when they were there, and they married a few doctors. None of that stuff. There are things that I know when my wife's family will share with me, and I know that I don't go any further, and I keep that which is theirs to them. And when I know they're doing anything, I walk away and go somewhere. So anybody that's around us that has anything, rightfully so, you should take it with a grain of salt. A grain of salt, okay? And see who they are and where they're coming from. Are you a blood family member? And then if you are, who is your father or mother? What was your direct connections? And there are very few of Malcolm's blood family members that know anything of us, including Aunt Betty.
Hey, everybody, this is Brother Ron. I am asking you all to do me a big favor. Think about supporting the We All Be movement. Your donation is tax deductible. The We All Be Group Incorporated is a recognized 501c3. And I'm just asking you all because I want to keep on bringing y'all quality work through the way that I know how to do best. And I'm going to sing my praises and toot my horn. A lot of y'all were not hip to Dick Gregory until Brother Ron brought him on the We All Be platform, until that jingle review we did. Y'all seen another side of Judge Joe Brown, and Judge Joe Brown's message has been amplified. But it was We All Be that brought Judge Joe Brown to y'all back in 2014. And so many others. And we covered so many things. So help us out so we can help you all. Peace.